Mic check, 1 2 1 2. What's up, guys? It's Sam, or the Portuguese mofo here. We're gonna do another train analysis for Daisetsuzan Basin. Um, so I did it in the multiplayer, obviously. Here I can show the key buildings, and we will see what's up here. So Daisetsuzan Basin. So yeah, I did think I do remember this map. I think it rises in the middle. And then we've got this little circle of trees here, right? Little gaps on the eastern side. And then a number of cliff structures, right? Impassable terrain, just from the looks of it. Yeah, exactly. So really we're sitting on the top of, I mean, you could call it a ridge. It's not exactly a ridge, right? It is referencing a basin, right? But it's almost like you got a hill inside of the basin, right? We've got some, alright, cliff sides here, and we've got our 3 dojos, or excuse me, actually only 2 dojos on this map. So, not that it matters which one it is for this, but yeah, so here, right, when I've played this map in the past, right, a lot of the fighting will end up occurring up here unless people really feel the need for the dojos, right? But I've also seen people just press aside, right? So, right, we've got all these impassable terrain features. Let me actually just start it. Okay, so you could move along this part, right, of this spur, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, but right here, right, blocked off. So you have some protection, right, on these spots here. And, you know, it's funny, just because how matchlocks work. Be interesting to see if they can position well up here, right, to get shots down. Sometimes, though, they just can't, like, quite position right, so they're a little too far back to actually get the proper shots, I feel like. Not that I've done it exactly here, but, you know, just playing the game in general, sometimes setting up, you think this is just perfect line of sight, right? It's like, boys, lay down, just get shots. But, you know, the individual unit tactics, right, every little model, they won't make those little personal micro adjustments that you need them to, right? So it's really similar on both sides, right? It's just this side doesn't have a cliff on the other side, right? It goes down into this little pond, okay, which you can fight down in here, okay, if you ever got down in there. This would be a bad spot to be. So I don't know who's going to willingly go down there for you to make it that easy, but if you ever catch them down there, it might not be bad. But I think the more important part of this stretch, right, is the connected tree line here that runs all the way around the map, right? So if you're going to approach the left side, right, it gives you some options here to try and be sneaky, right? Keyshow training units, okay, different things like that. You know, if it'd be really good depending on how I'm pretty sure this might have been outside the deployment zone. Sometimes you can't put Keyshow ninjas or Keyshow training units, but it'd be interesting if you could pull off like late, just walk a unit around, get them in late. Now this side, right, there's still some ambush opportunity, right? Some availability to even move through this, right, and set up some ambushes. But the travel space isn't as much, a little bit wider, especially on this side for the forests. And then these ones right here, right? Now it has an access point up and through, okay, but a lot more impassable terrain in all technicality on these two, right, with the forests on top. So you're going to have better cover, right, and there's less opportunity for the enemy to get flanking maneuvers. Where on these two, to be honest, a little bit easier, right? Just because the impassable terrain is right on the tips. So that's a good thing to note, right? This side, you got a little bit more cover and concealment. You have a little, right, there's stronger choke points on these access points. Okay, so some things to take note of there. And then obviously this ridge right here. Okay. And again, I would say, right, it would be great if matchlocks could perfectly set up, but I imagine it would be hard to get them set up really well here where they would get shots. Be a good thing to test though, try and figure out. You know, but bows are always good in areas like that, right? And even in this case, right, like if you were to set up bows here, and if they had matchlocks or anything down here, they're not gonna be able to as effectively shoot you, and you can still shoot them, right? Got all that dead space behind here, even though the archers technically wouldn't be able to see, they can do some damage for sure. So, but I feel like when I've played this map in the past, which I'd have to go through and look and find the matches or when I've watched them, right? A lot of the times, a lot of the fighting, right, it's like there's a positioning that happens up here, maybe a little skirmish. If there's an important dojo, you'll see the focused micro more towards the that dojo, and you'll see people try to make moves sort of late. I feel like I watch a lot of balanced approaches on this map. But I do think, right, this is another one of those maps where you have a lot of opportunity to make some choices, right? Because up at the top here, this is really flat. So matchlocks will do well here, right? Not a lot of things blocking their line of sight, even like coming down into certain spaces. Okay, so even though, right, we're on a hill in the middle of the basin, okay, and really it's more like a long ridge within the basin, okay. When you start to connect terrain features, when you're building a map, and the various declinations and whatnot that you're going to give it, you know, what you're going to call them. But anyways, right, matchlocks, right, it's really open, and there's a lot of maneuverability for cavalry, right? I would say you need to just be a little bit more careful. They're, right, the terrain can be pretty pronounced in some places, so just being wary of where you're trying to climb and stuff with cavalry and whatnot. And then just some of these impassable terrain features, right? Just to be wary of those, but shouldn't be really too hindering. So I think, again, right, balanced, I think a balanced approach will do you a lot of good on this map, just because, especially if your micro is really good, can do you a lot of good here. Just there's a lot of just different options, right, to use these terrain features to get choke points, right, to have areas where you can put troops where their flanks are better protected. You both start on the higher ground, essentially, outside of the back edges of the map, okay? And, right, with dojos, right, the odds of you actually fighting back here are pretty slim to none. However, if you ever get the old fall of the samurai, and for whatever reason, like, you want to talk about a good place to put some artillery, well, you can basically see the whole damn map from this hill. So that's just something to take note of here for Daisetsuzan Basin, because it is definitely not the same. Well, actually, this one isn't bad either. I think I would prefer the other one, but this one's pretty good too. So yeah, I would dare I say a very strong map for artillery. But in that note, right, if you're facing artillery, I would imagine that these spurs coming off, alright, the side of the hill here, great cover points just to take note of, right, if you're facing artillery. Okay, what some people call defilade, right? Just cover, alright? Just say, hey, I'm behind something that will block the things that will hit me. So, yeah, you know, it's like, it's funny, I haven't played it, right? I don't play a ton of Follow the Samurai online, and looking to build that avatar, but it's just something to note. Like, probably good cover points from artillery, depending on where they're positioned, of course, right? You know, odds are, well, actually, I guess it depends on the range. It might still be within range of the dojos, but you're probably going to put the artillery a little closer. Odds are, like here, back up in here somewhere. Can't see that dojo quite as well. That's something, that would be an interesting thing to take a look at. Maybe in future terrain analysis videos, I'll actually put some troops in the army, just so that we can see, right, maybe some of the shooting arcs and whatnot to get better evaluations and assessments. But yeah. So this map is cool to me. Right, obviously looks good. This is a fucking good looking game, and yeah, I would be, I think, be trying to ring a balanced army. I might look to try this map. I've been practicing to try and just get better and more efficient with matchlocks, right? Almost an army just like this, except that this is Follow the Samurai. Except they brought matchlock at you. Noob. But I mean, not usually 5, but I've been trying to work, you know, 3 matchlocks. You know, actually I saw him on last night, Sun Lisa. He created a whole guide around tercio type formation and making battle groups to include matchlocks. Yeah, and it's something that I'm not super great at. I do good one, or I should say I tend to be better when I just have one matchlock and can kind of focus its attention. For whatever reason, I put 2 more into the game, and I tend to struggle, right? But part of that is just getting clean with my micro and my hotkeying, and just being more proficient at it. But yeah, but I think balanced is probably best for this map, right? Like, in general, my strength is definitely a rush style, right? And you can definitely rush here. I don't know if a cavalry spam is the best move here, just because if you're cavalry spamming, I guess if you have a lot of horse archers, you'd be alright. Like I said, this isn't a bad map for cavalry at all. But, you know, just these spurs here. And it's not the most open map. I'll put it like that, right? I shouldn't say that. It's quite open, but just these 4 spurs right here coming out of the middle, I think it limits just a little bit of maneuverability, especially on this side, right? You know, you gotta actually move around things in a lot of cases, so just something to take note of as far as cavalry goes. And then I guess the last thing I'll say about this, right, is yeah, you could do a heavy skirmish army here too. Right, the dojos can sometimes be limiting to that factor, but the thing is you have a lot of space and terrain to work around these dojos if you're a skirmish army. So, like, I think balance is best here, but if you are very good with your micro, right, and, you know, outside of battle groups can control individual units really well, I think this is actually a really great map to skirmish on. Right, you might want some speed bonuses for your retinue just so that you can definitely get away from guys, depending on how you approach that. But yeah, I feel like a skirmish army could do really well and be a lot of fun. But again, right, and I say it all the time, I think heavy skirmish style is definitely my weakest. you know, still working at it, right? Still trying things. Sometimes it's just a build, right? You got to get a good build together for it. And then the other thing I do definitely need to get better at, this is just side note stuff now, not really about the terrain, but properly using my special abilities, you know. And I made a heavy bow general, and a lot of that was just understanding, right, this is kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, the meta for skirmish style. And I knew when I came in that I wanted to work on that aspect of the game. And I also knew that, you know, late in team battles, right, 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s, any of that, right, I definitely like to do it a lot. You know, bring him, and then obviously a bocav or two, because it's just one of those things, right? Even if you don't have a great fight against your opponent in front of you or whatnot, that ability to just continue to stay in the fight late can really help support a teammate and help you guys win, or us win, you know, if I'm playing. So I tend to do that a lot. But anyways, that's a little bit more of a tangent, not so much about the terrain. But anyways, yeah, Daisetsuzan Basin, just a really cool map, you know. I like looking at it. One last look. So if you come across this video, I hope it helped. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.